While countless people shout at their screens, paint their faces, and feel devastated because 11 strangers lost a match, there's also a huge portion of individuals who simply feel nothing at all. And according to neuroscience, their brains may actually function in a different way. Stay with me because what I'm about to explain could completely shift how you view the sports-obsessed people around you. Here's something rarely acknowledged. Not being interested in sports doesn't make you dull. It doesn't mean you lack enthusiasm. And it certainly doesn't imply that something is wrong with you. However, something intriguing is happening in your brain that differs from the 60% of Americans who follow sports intensely. Let's begin with a simple question. Why do so many people care so deeply? Humans are naturally tribal. For thousands of years, belonging to a group ensured survival. Your tribe protected you from danger, helped you gather food, and kept you alive. Sports are essentially modern-day tribes, just with better branding. When someone watches their team, their brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the same substance involved in family attachment. Surprising, right? Their brain essentially convinces them that these highly paid athletes are part of their group. But here's where it becomes more interesting. People who don't fixate on sports often display what psychologists describe as weaker tribal instincts. Their identity is less dependent on group belonging. They tend to be more independent. They are more inclined to think, I don't need to be part of something larger to feel whole, and research supports this. A 2019 study showed that individuals with little interest in sports exhibited far less us versus them thinking. In other words, they don't instinctively dislike another team simply for being different. But it becomes even more intriguing when we look at what happens in the brain of a sports enthusiast during a game. That sense of anticipation you feel before opening a gift, that's dopamine at work. Sports fans experience that same surge repeatedly during a match, with every play and every moment. Continuous small bursts of anticipation and reward. It's genuinely addictive. Brain imaging studies reveal that watching your team activates the same reward circuits associated with gambling and other highly engaging behaviors. And here's the key point. Uncertainty makes it powerful. Not knowing the outcome keeps the dopamine flowing. This is known as intermittent reinforcement, the most addictive reward pattern in psychology, the same mechanism that makes slot machines so compelling. The process closely resembles other forms of behavioral addiction. The brain doesn't strongly differentiate between dopamine sources. It simply seeks more. People who aren't interested in sports just don't have their dopamine systems activated by indirect competition. And this may partly be genetic. Research from the University of Chicago suggests that differences in dopamine receptor genes can influence how much someone enjoys competitive spectator activities. Think about that. Your complete indifference to whether a team wins or loses might actually be rooted in your DNA. But there's another dimension. Sports fans often experience something called burging, basking in reflected glory. When their team wins, they say, "We won." When it loses, they say, "They lost." Notice the shift in language. Those who don't obsess over sports are less likely to engage in this distancing behavior. Their sense of self is more stable and consistent. They don't rely on external victories to feel accomplished. Their self-esteem tends to be less influenced by factors outside their control. Now, before this sparks debate, I'm not claiming one perspective is superior, but there are real psychological differences, and understanding them is fascinating. Here's something that might seem contradictory. Sports fans often score higher on certain measures of empathy. They regularly invest emotionally in the struggles of others, even strangers wearing their team's colors. So why don't non-sports enthusiasts show the same level of empathy toward athletes? It comes down to how empathy is directed. Everyone has a limited capacity for deep emotional investment. People who aren't interested in sports often channel that empathy elsewhere, towards social issues, personal relationships, creative pursuits, or intellectual challenges. A 2021 study found that individuals with low sports interest scored significantly higher in openness to experience and appreciation of art and beauty. They find emotional fulfillment through art, music, nature, and ideas. Their brains are still seeking reward, meaning, connection, and even transcendence. They just find it in different areas. And there's another aspect to consider. For some individuals, a lack of interest in sports can function as a defense mechanism. Perhaps they had negative experiences in physical education, felt excluded, or rejected the competitiveness often associated with sports culture. Or maybe they simply never understood why adults become so emotionally invested in a game. Your indifference might have a deeper explanation, or maybe you just find it uninteresting. Both are entirely valid. But here's something that explains why sports fans and non-fans often struggle to relate to each other. It ultimately comes down to how people find meaning. Sports enthusiasts discover meaning in storytelling, the underdog victory, the comeback, the rivalry, the dynasty. These narratives are compelling because they are unpredictable, like real-life drama with real stakes. Those who don't care about sports may see that randomness as meaningless. They might think, why invest emotionally in something I can't influence, involving people I don't know, in a game that doesn't affect my life? They're not wrong, but neither are sports fans. These are simply two different ways of fulfilling the human need for meaning and narrative. One group finds epic storytelling in a championship journey. The other finds it in literature, relationships, creative work, or scientific discovery. Researchers describe this difference as parasocial investment versus direct engagement. Sports fans form one-sided emotional connections with teams and players. Non-fans prefer investing energy where there is real interaction and impact. Neither approach is better. They are just different ways of engaging with life. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, known for his work on optimal experience, showed that flow states, moments of complete immersion, can arise from many activities. For some, that state comes from watching sports. For others, it comes from entirely different pursuits. Interestingly, people who aren't deeply invested in sports often report feeling more present in their own lives. They aren't spending hours absorbed in someone else's struggle. They're focused on their own experiences. There's something quietly powerful about that. So what does all of this mean? If you don't care about sports, you're not missing a fundamental human experience. You're simply wired differently. Your reward system, your sense of belonging, and your emotional focus are all calibrated in another way. And that's perfectly fine. The next time someone asks, "Did you watch the game?" and you genuinely don't care, remember, you're not broken or boring. You're just playing a different kind of game. And it might, in its own way, have even higher stakes. If this resonates with you, you may also find it fascinating to explore why quieter individuals process information differently and how that might actually be an advantage. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe and don't miss the next one. See you in the next one.